Welcome to literature class, and I'm so happy to talk to you. Let's start with the understanding of literature. We must understand that literature is any imaginative work of art that reflects art. Literature is therefore the mirror of life, the mirror of life. And we say literature has three major classifications. We have drama, prose, and poetry. Let's look at first and foremost drama. Drama is more like a pictorial representation of a written work of art, usually performed on stage. And drama becomes a play when it is performed on stage. And we have three major classification of drama. We have what we call tragedy, tragicomedy, and comedy. Let's start with comedy. Comedy is just a play that starts on a happy note and ends on a happy note, while tragicomedy starts sadly and ends on a happy note. While tragedy, it's a play that ends on a sad note. And there are three major components of tragedy. There must be what we call a tragic hero who has a tragic flaw, who now suffers a tragic fall. Another two classifications of drama is what we call farce and melodrama. And farce is just an exaggerated comedy for the purpose of laughter, where believability is sacrificed for humor. And don't forget, also, a melodrama is more like a tragic farce where emotion portrayed as too strong to be true and sometimes have an artificial happy ending. Then we go to prose. Prose is actually divided into two broad division. We have fiction and non-fiction. More recently, we have the concept of faction. Fiction are just work that are from my imagination. It did not happen. It is not real. Why non-fiction are work of art that are real, really happened. And but factions stand in between. They are just imaginative work of art that bears some historical fact in it, like the movie October 1st by Kunle Afolayan has was set in October 4th. The real happenings of October 4th happened in the movie, but the core of the story actually fiction. Now let's look at fiction. We have classes of fiction. We start first with fable. Fables are stories that uses animal characters to represent human beings. Most of the time, when you watch some of your Lion King and all these your cartoon, a lot of them are fable. And we also have what we call this George Orwell Animal Farm. Another work of art is called another example of fiction is allegory. Allegory are actually stories that employ the use of symbols. For example, when you have a story where in Nigeria, an old woman dressed in green, white, green, and is probably being flogged and tied down, we can say, oh, that woman is more or less like a symbol of Nigeria. So such story will be called allegorical story. We also have a classification of stories that are parables. Parables are stories that are based on illustrations. We also have works of, and all these stories can be form of didactic, which is stories that teaches a moral lesson. We also have fantasy. Fantasies are stories that are removed from reality. A story that is removed from reality. A story that is removed from reality, usually set in a non-existence location. Stories like Gulliver Travels, Robinson Crusoe, Alice in the Wonderland are examples of fantasy. And now we also have what we call forms of fictions. Forms of fiction. A fiction can be in form of a novel. A novel is a long narrative, fictitious work, usually ranging from 50,000 words and above. While a novella is a shorter version of a story. A novella is also called novelette, and it's a shorter version of a story that has between 20 to 50,000 words. We also have a short story. A short story is a short story, and it's usually a story of between 1,000, 5,000 to 20,000 words will come under the short story. We also have a flag fiction. Flag fiction is a story of under 1,000 words. We have also what we call a mini saga. Mini saga is a story of exactly 50 words. Exactly 50 words. And let's look at poetry. Poetry. Before we go to poetry, sorry, we're here to talk about non-fiction. Non-fiction are stories that are real, true to life. And examples of non-fiction are our autobiographies and our biographies. An example of a biography. Biography is a story of someone written by another person, and we have a lot of biographical works. Autobiography is a story of somebody's life written by himself, and we have also forms of autobiography. One of it is a diary. Diary is a dated account of somebody's life, a dated account of somebody's daily activities. That is a diary. I also have a memo. Memo is actually any story that is actually focused on somebody's personal experience, where the focus is more on the people that that person actually came across, personal experiences, the activities surrounding that, and everything. So that is that about prose. And talking about poetry. Poetry is quite dynamic. We have fiction. Sorry, in poetry, I personally classify poetry on two grounds. We have lyrical poetries and non-lyrical poetries. An example of lyrical poetry is first and foremost the word lyric. Lyric is a poem. It's gone from the Greek word lyre. Lyre is a musical instrument. So lyric is therefore a poem that where the words are actually meant to be sung, is a poem that is meant to be sung. An example of a lyrical poem is also ballad. Ballad is a poem that tells an old story, usually ends with a refrain. Some of you that love Celine Dion so much, we say that she sings ballad and all. We also have examples, multiple examples of lyrical poems. One of it is lullaby. Lullaby is a poem that is meant to lull a baby to sleep. Is a poem meant to for a baby. We also have what we call dirge and elegy. Elegy is a poem that is meant to make people cry. It's a mournful poem. So when it is written, it's an elegy. When it is performed, it's a dirge. So we have that also as an example. We also have what we call the prothalamium and epithalamium. Prothalamium and epithalamium are usually songs for weddings, usually Greek weddings, and prothalamium is for a wedding. When it is performed at that wedding, it is called epithalamium. It's just a little variance in the two. Let's just jump into what I call non-lyrical poems. Non-lyrical poems. An example, I start with a pastoral poem. A pastoral poem is a poem that is meant to talk about the rustic life of some people. It's a poem based on the experiences of the rural life of people, usually of shepherds. And of course, the word pastoral is also from the word pasture. It's also from the word pasture. Let's also not taking also from the fact that it's a major part of non-lyrical poem is what we call ode, ode, and ode. I want to use this forum to differentiate between ode, panegyric, invocation, and eulogy. Eulogy is to praise someone. It doesn't have to be poetic. Anything written to praise someone is a eulogy. Panegyric is more like a praise chant, deeper than eulogy. Yoruba call panegyric oriki, usually a chant that goes deep into someone's root, bringing out the virtues and values of their ancestors, using it to praise this person who has come from such wonderful background and all. While invocation is more like a prayer where probably a god is being summoned to release his blessings on people, and there's this invocation that blessing should spread into the day and that which they're about to go into. But ode is different. Ode is not just a poem of praise. Ode is a poem that directly addresses an object, that directly addresses a person, focusing more on the beauty of that person, on the power of that person, uniqueness of that person, and some other part. And one of the most powerful and celebrated ode writer, ode poet is John Keats. Some of you have read Ode to a Grecian Horn and Ode to a Nightingale. And quite a lot of poems also. We have various classes of poems that I may not be able to cover in just this introductory class alone. But more importantly, we have what we call dramatic poem. We have limerick. Limerick is just a funny poem of like 6 lines, if I'm right. We have got your Clerio is a funny but nonsensical poem. Those one are there. But let me use this. Let me round off on sonnet. Sonnet is just a poem of 14 lines. It's a poem of, and there are three classes of sonnet. We have what we call the Petrarchan or Italian sonnet. Petrarchan and Italian sonnet are divided into a sextet, which is a stanza of 6 lines, an octave and a sextet, a stanza of 8 lines, and a stanza of 6 lines, and making 14. And usually they have the format of ABBA, ABBA, DC, CDC. The format, the rhyme scheme of the concluding sextets are not usually stable. We also have what we call the English or Shakespearean sonnet, which is quite which is usually divided into if I'm right, if it's divided into 444, that is 3 quatrain and ends with a couplet. A couplet is a stanza of 2 lines, so it ends with a couplet, usually in a rhyme pattern, alternative rhyme scheme: A B A B C D C D E F E F, and ends with a G G. Ends with a GG. Ends with GG. So we also have what we call John Miltonic sonnet, which takes more like the style of the Italian sonnet. But unlike most sonnets that are probably focused on love and all romantic tales, John Miltonic sonnet decided to go into other issues and talked about other matters. I don't know what you have gone through, but I tell you that literature is a fantastic experience.